What it is, guys, it is your boy Simone Fan 101, and today we will be looking at another Marvel Cinematic Universe film. This time we will be reviewing Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, The Adventures of the Vagina. What the fuck is wrong with me? What is wrong with me? Something must be wrong with me. Anyway, I wish the movie was called that. The Adventures of Vagina? I'd watch that all day, except that would be porn, and yeah, that's... no way Marvel's gonna do that. And the day that Marvel does do that is the day that I officially explode out of happiness. So, okay. Moving on to the actual film, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 is quite obviously a sequel to Guardians of the Galaxy. One thing that might be confusing at first is that even though this is a film that takes place in Phase 3 and the film was released in 2017, the events of this film only take place a few months after the events of the first film, which means that technically, if you want to go by years, this is still 2014 Guardians of the Galaxy we're talking about, and the Guardians of the Galaxy are still relatively new at working together. It also explains why Groot here is still a baby and not an adolescent like he honestly should have been by 2017, as the next year in 2018 we got teenage Groot. Anyway, so just want to get that out of the way. You know, and so the timeline around this time gets a little bit murky with a few exceptions here and there. So yeah. Okay, so what's the story? We're still in 2014. Oh, forgot to mention. James Gunn comes back and directs this, and writes and directs this film. Most of the cast in the first movie that return, except for John C. Reilly, whose Xandarian character is not at all in this film, and of course Lee Pace, who died during the events of the first film. Not the actor, but the character. This film had a budget of $200 million. It had a box office of $863 million. So clearly this was a hit. So, okay, now that I've started and stopped and I did the stop and start push, start and stop, I should say. What the hell's wrong with me? It's 2014 still, a few months after the events of the first film. And Star-Lord, Gamora, Drax, Rocket, and Baby Groot are still together doing their normal things. They were hired by a woman by the name of Aisha, who is the leader and head mistress of the Sovereign race. The people are actually called the Sovereign, which are a bunch of golden people. They hired the Guardians to protect these things called Anulex batteries from a giant interdimensional demon or monster, or whatever the hell it is. And they did it, as it turns out, we see a scene later, in exchange for Nebula, who was caught trying to steal the batteries. Now, of course, they don't explain this immediately right off the bat with exposition. No, they go right into the Guardians of the Galaxy style opening with a song and a dance routine, this time by Baby Groot, who is dancing to the theme Mr. Blue Sky, which is just absolutely funny, while the Guardians try to destroy the monster. So yeah, they eventually kill the monster. Drax apparently calls them Harbulary batteries because, well, as much as we love Drax, he is a dumbass. And so they make their peace with the Sovereign, except for one in detail. I forgot to mention this. So the opening of the film doesn't actually start immediately with, the action slash opening credits dance number. No, we start out with what else? Another fucking flashback. I've been counting. That makes 10 flashbacks, or in the first Captain America's case, flash forward, since the start of the MCU. Though, to be fair, it is very brief. We see a young Kurt Russell, we don't know his name yet, and a young Meredith, who apparently he calls Meredith Quill, who is obviously Peter Quill's mother, and they're looking at some kind of random blue plant outside of a Dairy Queen, and this is 1980, before Peter Quill is born. So we're assuming the man is the father, or maybe some kind of boyfriend. At least that's what we see at first. So cutting back to the present, because apparently I forgot to mention that scene. After making their deal with Ayesha, the leader of the Sovereign, Rocket, for whatever reason, stole Anulek's batteries from the Sovereign, and only he and Drax know about this. And Drax pretty soon spills the beans after a Sovereign fleet goes after the Guardian ship. They get into a fight with the Sovereign fleet, which is, they're all remote control ships where they play like a friggin' Space Invaders game. They even have the the 8-bit sound effects and everything, like in one of the old arcades, which is just funny. And on top of that, and of course this leads to funny moments with Nebula and God, what's his name? Drax. Pretty much funny moments for a lot of people, even Baby Groot. And eventually they crash on some kind of random ass planet, and are saved by a guy, from the rest of the fleet by a guy that calls himself Ego, who is the Kurt Russell character we saw earlier, but older, and reveals himself to be Peter's father. So yes, he invites Peter, Gamora, and Drax to his home planet, while Rocket and Groot remain behind to A, keep an eye on Nebula, and B, repair their ship so that way they can pick them up on Ego's planet and get the hell out of there. While this is going on, we cut to a planet called Contraxia, where we see a confrontation between Yondu Udonta and a character called Stakar, played in this film by the great Sylvester Stallone. Apparently, Stakar, apparently, and during the confrontation, Stakar revealed that for the most part, Yondu was exiled from most of the Ravager community, because apparently he was dealing in some kind of child trafficking, and Yondu claims to not know exactly what was going on with these kids when he was doing it. Which of course I'll reveal later in the review. So, and of course, there is some kind of there's tension between the Stallone character and Michael Rooker's character, and that they didn't want to do what they did to Yondu, but they felt they had to. Not long after this, Ayesha hilariously comes in with the red carpet, so she doesn't touch any of the snow because they're all golden people, and she's like the top dog. She hires Yondu. She hires Yondu to capture the Guardians of the Galaxy, or kill the Guardians, capture or kill the Guardians for the Sovereign. They are able to capture Rocket, but when it's revealed when Yondu does hesitate in order to kill any of the members of the Guardians, whom he had a hand in raising, his lieutenant by the name of Taserface. Yes, that is a stupid name, and obviously it was done. That was done by design. Taserface becomes a turncoat, leads a mutiny with the help from Nebula, who, thanks to Groot's naivety, allows her to go free, and Taserface imprisons both Rocket and Yondu in bond, while Groot basically becomes a little mascot. Cutting back to Star-Lord and the others, it's revealed that Ego is obviously not a regular guy. He is what he's called a Celestial, which they're basically gods, though not the big G as he calls it, it's a little g. They're basically gods that manipulated matter around their own consciousness to form their own home planet. At least that's what ego is. And he explained that he created himself to be human, searched the world to discover a purpose, to find meaning, and fell in love with Star-Lord's mother, Meredith. And apparently, not only that, but after meeting up with Quill, it's revealed later on that Peter, being the son of a half Celestial and the son of a full-blooded Celestial, has the abilities to wield the Celestial's powers through the planet. It was also revealed that very early on when they first met, that after his mother died, Yondu was sent to pick up Peter and deliver him to Ego, but for whatever reason, never did. And of course, Star-Lord believes that. Yeah, Star-Lord believes that that Yondu did it just so he could use him as a member of the Ravagers instead of doing what was the right thing. Of course, believe it or not, and I didn't mention this in my last review, but it was alluded to twice in the first Guardians of the Galaxy film that their original mission was to drop Peter Quill off to his father, to Ego. Especially, and what was mentioned once by one of the people near the beginning of the movie, but it was mentioned near the end of the at the end of the film when the Ravagers leave Xandar, and they make it, and there's a comment there said by Yondu, who's like, "We're glad we didn't give him to his father. His father was an asshole." So we see that, and apparently, now we know why, considering the events of the film. I didn't bring my water with me, so if I cough more, blame that on me. So, going back to Yondu and the others, thanks to the quick wit of first of all, Yondu and Rocket start to bond because apparently Yondu and Rocket are very similar to each other in a lot of ways. Both of them are assholes. Both of them push others away that are loyal to them or want to be friends with them, and both of them are scared. Are very, they think they're the top dog, or they act like it. Not because they are that way, but because they are afraid and they don't want to look weak. They also find a way, thanks to Groot and Kraglin, who is one of the remaining Ravagers loyal to Yondu, because most of the Ravagers that were still loyal to Yondu were sent out in space and died of the cold, hearted space. Kraglin faked his loyalty to Taserface and was able to help Groot, Baby Groot, break Yondu and Rocket out of prison. They kill everyone on board. They destroy the ship. Though not before Taserface warns the Sovereign about their freedom and where the Guardians are. Cutting and of course, after finding out that Ego found Star-Lord, Yondu's like, "Fuck that, we got to go to them." Because he thinks Ego is bad news, and it turns out it is. Ego has basically not a sidekick, but an assistant by the name of Mantis who helps him go to sleep. However, there's a problem with that. Mantis knows exactly what Ego wants, and what Ego wants is a child that can bear the powers of a Celestial because he has got a great evil scheme. As it turns out, Star-Lord's mother Meredith was not only Ego's she was a love of Ego, but not only was she not the first person to, say, make love and procreate with Ego, she is far, far from the first. Apparently, Nebula took before I mention that, continue. Nebula did take a ship to fight Gamora on Ego's planet. And even though they fight each other, they do eventually hash it out because they were raised as siblings, and they eventually find a whole treasure trove of skeleton bodies. And apparently it's revealed by both Ego to Star-Lord when he starts warping Star-Lord's mind, and by Mantis, who grows a bond with Drax, that not only does Ego wants a celestial son or daughter, whatever shall it be, and that he tried to procreate with so many different alien species until he found the right match with Meredith on Earth, and created, well, Star-Lord, basically created Peter Quill. And seemingly he has Quill in his grasp, because Quill is slowly being turned over to Ego's side until it's revealed that that Ego was the one that actually put the tumor in Meredith's head, causing her to have brain cancer and die of brain cancer. Oh, damn. So, yes, Ego was the one who caused Meredith's death at the beginning of the first movie, causing severe traumatic, basically a big traumatic change in Star-Lord from then on forward. And this, understandably, pisses Peter off to no end and starts fighting against him, and then it's revealed what the plans were. So he teams up, so all the people come together, he teams up with Rocket, Drax, Yondu, Groot, everyone, including Nebula. They all team up in order to destroy not only Ego, but also the Sovereign, who, thanks to Taserface, have tracked their position to Ego's planet. And eventually, they do destroy all the Sovereign ships. And eventually, after a final battle, which includes celestial beings, one of them turning into a friggin' Pac-Man, apparently, that being, of course, Star-Lord, they are able to destroy Ego. Everyone escapes except for Peter and Yondu. And because there's only one way to get out, Yondu sacrifices himself to save Peter's life. And Yondu gets a Ravager, basically a Ravager, I keep saying Ravager, a Ravager funeral, in which Stakar, his old Ravager, I keep saying Ravager. Stop being stupid. His old Ravager running mate actually attended it, because Stakar straight up insulted Yondu early in the film, saying that you'll never have the Ravager funeral, nothing will ever come of your death. But when Rocket, who of course grew a bond to Yondu, told Stakar and the other Ravagers what Yondu did, they came by for the funeral. So yeah, so I'll get to the death scene in a bit, because yeah, I'll just let me get to it. So we see also Nebula breaks off from the Guardians, so that way she can find a way to kill Thanos herself. Then we see various mid and post-credit scenes in which Kraglin takes up Yondu's telekinetic arrow and control fin, and it leads to a funny moment where he accidentally stabs Drax, which is just funny. we see the leader of the Ravagers, Stakar O'Gord, reunite with his ex-teammates. And by the way, in case you don't know, Stakar was the name of the original leader of the Guardians of the Galaxy, the old Guardians of the Galaxy comics, not the new one with Star-Lord, but the old one with a guy called Stakar. And it again leads to another funny moment where Stallone basically says, "Let's go steal some shit." It's just funny. Groot grows into a teenager and apparently gets a bit mouthy. A group of Watchers abandon an informant, who apparently is Stan Lee, which Stan Lee technically cameos in this film twice. And Aisha creates the leader of the Sovereign again, creates a new artificial being who plans for it to destroy the Guardian, naming him Adam. Now, I didn't know this at first, but apparently this is a reference to Adam Warlock from the comics. And I'm like, hell yeah, we're getting some Adam Warlock time. So, okay. Not so. Yeah, I did kind of unpack a plot there. But okay, so what do I think of the film? Well, first of all, this is a fucking fantastic film. This is, again, much like with Civil War, this is one of the best films that the MCU ever did, in my opinion. And I said the first film was absolutely great, but there were a couple of small issues with that. This one, in my opinion, seemed to go out of its way to fix those issues. Casting all did great, but, so, like, look at the new casting. First of all, Vin Diesel does a baby Groot very well, just as well as he did regular Groot. In fact, out of the 3 Groots we've seen so far in the films that the Guardians were in, Baby Groot is my favorite of the Groots. Then you have, Michael Rooker's Yondu Dante's still great. Karen Gillan as Nebula was still very good. And then you have a few newcomers. You have Palm Clementieff as Mantis, who's sort of naive, not that smart, but is very innocent. You have Elizabeth Debicki as Aisha, who does a pretty good job playing her role as just a completely out there kind of golden priestess. You have Chris Sullivan as Taserface, who tries his best to be serious even though he's got a fucking stupid name, which was the entire point. Sean Gunn as Kraglin. Now, to be fair, Kraglin was in the first Guardians film, but in this one, Kraglin gets more character and more personality. We see Sylvester Stallone as Takaro Gord, who actually does, even though he's in like 2 scenes in the whole movie, he actually does a pretty good job, to be fair. And then, of course, you got Kurt Russell's Ego, who turns out to be the big bad villain of the film. You got some minor ones, like Laura Haddock as Meredith Quill. We got the return of Howard the Duck, voiced by Seth Green, which is just hilarious. And as well as Cosmo the dog at one point. So yeah, we got a lot of really good shit in terms of the casting. But then we go to the characters themselves. This film went out of its way to kind of expand on all the characters in some small way, shape, or form. We see more of a progression between the relationship between Star-Lord and Gamora. And one of the things this film does well is that they increase the aspect of the relationship without them having actually to kiss. All they really do is hug each other and dance together. And after the death of Yondu, Gamora, in her own little way, finally reveals that, yeah, she's got feelings for Peter, and she starts a relationship with him. So yeah, we have that. We got Gamora, of course, trying to figure things out with Nebula, who, even though Nebula looked completely evil in the first movie, it's revealed in this movie that she has her own problems, and there's a reason why she hates Gamora, at least at this time, because all Nebula ever wanted was a little girl, was a sister. And when they grew up, it became perplexingly backwards, where Gamora was trying to plead in Nebula's sanity as a sister, but Nebula was the one that wasn't listening. So, kind of a fate of cruel irony. You got Drax, whose character was he was already a great character. He's very immature in the way that he does things. But to be fair, Drax is part of a people that's not exactly very, very bright. So you have that. And even his character increased a little bit when he starts to form a small little bond with Mantis. Baby Groot is just absolutely adorable. I love him. Rocket also expands his character as he and Yondu form a bond because of how similar they are. And I already mentioned earlier exactly what the similarities are, so I'm just going to skip it right here. I already mentioned Nebula. Mantis, who's still naive and innocent, but legitimately wants to do the right thing, and after forming the bond with Drax, feels that she has to save them because they're her friends. So a lot of characters got some progression, and Ego, oh my god. Ego is the first in a line of villains where, for some reason, for the next several films, these movies just fucking nailed their villains. One of the biggest weaknesses of the MCU was how they handled their villains, choosing to increase the quality of their heroes more, which to be fair to them, that is the goal. But you also want to have good villains. I mean, after all, you know, a hero can only be as good as his villains. And even if you have a weak villain, the hero looks like, man, the hero could really take this guy asshole down. And for some reason, and like, look at the last several villains we got. We got the likes of Malekith, Ronan. I just reviewed a movie that had Caecilius, who was also a very weak villain. You had some good villains, but were also human characters that didn't really stand out too much, like Alexander Pierce and Helmut Zemo. And you know, which of course were both Russo brothers villains. And as well as someone like Darren Cross, who, as much as I liked Corey Stoll in that movie, was basically a kind of a rip-off version of Obadiah Stane. The only villain that really stood out during that time was Ultron. And that's because, well, he's friggin' Ultron. He's got to look different. He's got to stand out. Ego was the first in a line of MCU villains, 6 movies in a row where they had great villains lined up one after another, and Ego was the first because of just how different a villain he is. He starts out as a guy who's seemingly a good guy, he has all the power to destroy the universe, but seemingly chooses not to. He's like, oh, he's a chill guy. But you realize something's wrong, and apparently, Ego, his true plan is to take over the entire universe, and that's why he wants a celestial sun. So that way he can use the sun's celestial powers, and together they can. He puts his the essence of his plant into every planet he's been on, and basically turn every single planet into Ego, into him, which is kind of fucked up when you actually think about it. So yeah, we got a lot of characters that have progression here, and it's just, man, the ending. I gotta save that ending for last. The plot, it's a very well done plot. It's well conceived. It's very funny. The movie is extremely hilarious. And the first movie was very funny. But this movie just takes it up a notch in terms of the humor. You know, what I liked about this film also, it reminded me of Star Wars Episode 5, in which while there's a few action scenes sprinkled out, for the most part, it's just these characters chilling around and talking. And trying to figure things out. Especially with the Star-Lord, Gamora, Drax group of people. I think that was really well done. Hang on a second. So yeah, that was very well done. And just how they handled the plot. And it was never boring at all when they were just talking and, you know, connecting with each other. You had special effects. The visual effects were absolutely stunning. And this is the film that, more so than some of the other MCU films, let the visual effects do the talking. Not in terms of, say, Doctor Strange, when the visual effects was the most visually intriguing. I'm talking more about when the visuals are telling the story itself, rather than just lines upon lines of dialogue. Like we see all the Ravagers out in space that were killed. We see landscapes of Ego's planet, and a moment where Gamora's out in a field where you know what she's thinking, and it's like, damn, I really fucked up, but I don't know what to do. It's like she doesn't know what to do, and you can immediately tell that. The visual storytelling is great. One thing I didn't mention, or didn't mention that much in the first review, was the music. Now, of course, you got the score, which is absolutely great in this film too, but you have the music that's taken out of the 70s. Now, the reason I didn't mention it in the first film was because it had more of a landmark in this film. The reason why we get 70s music is because Chris Pratt's mother, Meredith, gave Star-Lord a Walkman, which was destroyed in this film, but later he replaced it with a Zune. She gave him a Walkman in order for him to listen to music that she grew up listening to in the 70s. Apparently she was a young mom when she died. But she grew up listening to it in the 70s. And that music is a part of Chris Pratt's character. So the reason why we get that music is because that music embodies who Star-Lord Peter Quill is. And in this film they actually made mention of it because there was a certain song that connected both Ego and Meredith to each other. And you know, also connects, Meredith more to Star-Lord again. We even see a flashback very quickly at the end, where when Star-Lord accepts his celestial side, gets his celestial powers to beat the shit out of Ego, and we see a few flashbacks or flashes of him with other characters. One of them was being raised by Yondu, essentially being raised by Yondu to shoot. The other one was as a young boy listening to music with his mom, who looked like she wasn't sick at this time. So probably right before she died. Anyway, then we got to mention the absolute best part of this film. And yes, so far, there's not really too much of the way of flaws. Maybe some minor, tiny quibbles. But for the most part, this is just an absolutely amazing movie. And it's so freaking awesome at what it does. One of my best. Probably in the top, well, until I review Avengers Infinity War, definitely in the top 3. Maybe top 5. It'll definitely be in the top 5 by the end of things here. But the ending, I gotta mention the ending. The ending is by far the best part of this film, because for the most part I was going into the film like, it's okay, it's a really strong 9. But then the ending happened, and I'm like, my god, it's a 10 film. It's a 10 out of 10 film. And yes, my rating is a 10 out of 10 because of the ending. Yondu, as it turns out, he found out about Ego, what he was doing with all his kids, and how it all was leading to their deaths, and he's like, fuck that, I gotta save Peter Quill. So he made up a lie about Peter Quill to keep him in line with the Ravagers, because he did not want Ego to get his hands on Quill, which is part of the why, which is, in my opinion, part of the why that Yondu trained Star-Lord, probably to defend himself should he ever find Ego and something ever happen between them. And it's like, yeah, Ego may have been Star-Lord's biological father, but Yondu was Peter Quill's true daddy, basically saying he raised him and all that. And it's done so fucking well in this film. And it also shows that why he was so hard on Peter in the first film, because he does care about him. And of course, sometimes, and that actually, mimics real life in the fact that, yeah, sometimes fathers are hard on their sons and daughters because they do care about them that much and they want them to succeed. Sometimes they're not always happy. And after Quill loses his powers, after Ego's death, his celestial powers, I mean, God, that death sequence. Listen, I rarely if ever cried watching a movie at my age. When I was a kid, that was a different story. But rarely if ever I never cry during a film. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 was the first film of the MCU, even Avengers Infinity War was the first film that I actually cried in. Yes, I cried, I teared up at the end of Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, a comedy film. And I teared up because I think the comedy was a good part of it, because we got to know these characters. We got to laugh and smile alongside them. So when something legitimately heartbreaking does happen to them, it's legitimately heartbreaking. The way it was shot, the way the music added to the drama, the acting between Michael Rooker and Chris Pratt, masterful. It's one of those things where it's like, oh god, this is a 10 out of 10. This movie is fucking incredible. So yeah, this movie is incredible. It's fantastic. It's absolutely amazing, and you need to go check it out right now. One of the best of the MCU. In my opinion, a personification of a 10 out of 10 film. So until next time, guys, I'll see you later when I review Spider-Man Homecoming. My disc is very scratched up for Spider-Man Homecoming that I got from the library, so hopefully I won't have to wait till Monday to get it. So until next time, guys, be well, stay safe, have a good day, and I'll see you next time, guys, when I hopefully tomorrow review Spider-Man Homecoming. Until next time, guys, peace.